Welcome back to Millside, a lovely glamping experience here in Lincolnshire. My name is Liz Blount, and today I'm going to be presenting the final session on recruitment. So we're going to be looking at some practical tips to how you can make your recruitment and selection processes even better and how you can stand out from the crowd. You remember in the first video, we talked about spending some time preparing before we leapt into recruiting. Even if you're in a hurry and you feel you need to get somebody in post quickly, I'd still really recommend you spend some time thinking about what you need and what you want in that role. Even if it's a straight replacement in your head, somebody's left and you need someone to fill that role, it's still worth taking a moment to just step back and think, is that still exactly what we need? Do we want to tweak the job description a little bit? Maybe ask the person to do something slightly different. Or think about the skills that you're looking for. Was there something that the last person brought that was particularly helpful in that role? Or is there maybe some skills that you wish they'd had that you'd like to look for in the next person? So it's really worth taking some time. I sometimes compare it to when you go looking for a new car. The more time you've thought beforehand, looking into what you want, what you need, your budget, maybe any particular specs that you need, then the better it is when you actually walk onto the garage forecourt. And the same's true here. The more time you've spent at this stage thinking about exactly what you want out of your new hire, the easier it'll be at the later stages when you come to choosing the person. Making it clear in the advert as well what you need helps applicants. They can do some self-selecting at this stage, which will help you if they're not applying for jobs that they're clearly not going to be suited for. We talked about sourcing as well and how you can look at advertising other than just the standard routes. It's a difficult market out there at the moment and people are struggling to find good applicants. So it's a good time to try thinking a little bit outside the box. The first thing to think about is maybe growing your own. So pay attention to those people you've already got working for you. Obviously, this depends on the size of the business, but even in a small organisation, it's worth thinking about the employees you've already got and how they might be able to work for you in the future. If you've got people working for you, you already know them well, you know their strengths and weaknesses, and they know you as well and how you like to work. So you've got a great foundation for being an employee. Social media is something that people are now starting to use for advertising, and obviously that can be a great way of reaching people. But do just be a little bit careful when you're using it, especially because of the algorithms that are behind it. A recent survey showed, for example, that Facebook tended to show nursery nurse adverts mainly to women and mechanic adverts mainly to men. You don't want to find yourself being guilty of discrimination, as we talked about earlier, not through your own intent, but just because of the way that a social media platform has worked. That's not to say that it's not a good thing to use, but just be a little bit careful. Careers fairs can be a good way of reaching a different demographic of people and one way of tapping into people that might be particularly interested in your industry. You could go to a careers fairs for people that are interested in hospitality or perhaps visitor attractions, and you've got people that have already got an interest in how you want to do your business. You can go one stage further than that and link in with education and training providers. This gives you an opportunity to see that next generation of people that are coming through. And whilst you might think you'd rather have somebody that's got experience, there can be an advantage to having somebody fresh from college. They've got all that information recent in their heads, and you can take them on board and train them as you want, and you haven't got any bad habits to get rid of. So that can work really well. You can even think about your customers as potential recruits. They already know your business, and if they're repeat customers, presumably they like what you do and how you do it. So they might be someone that you want to consider bringing on board. It's also worth thinking a little bit outside the box. So for example, Timpsons are well known for their policy that they talk about publicly of recruiting ex-offenders. 10% of their staff have got a criminal record. That might seem like a risky strategy, perhaps, and of course it depends on the type of business that you're running, but for them it's worked really well, it's got them a lot of public support, and the people that they recruit in this way tend to be very loyal to the organisation that have given them that opportunity. There's other organisations such as Only a Pavement Away that work with people who are homeless, and quite a few of those have gone on to work well with a lot of hospitality industries. I heard someone only the other day someone who was speaking from the Ivy chain of restaurants, talking about how they've partnered with them and they now have people who were homeless working in their Mayfair restaurant. The examples I've given might not be right for you, but it's to try and say that you might want to think about casting your net more widely, and not just in a general sense, but thinking about if there's particular areas out there that you could tap into where you think there might be talent that could be useful in your business. Just as with customers, word of mouth and your reputation is important when you're trying to attract potential employees as well. What would your current employees say about you? What are they saying about you? It's really easy now for people to share information. All sorts of things get posted on Facebook and Twitter, and that's a whole different HR issue that we might want to talk about. But just bear in mind that your reputation will be out there. We even have sites now such as Glassdoor that ask employees to post their experience online of what it's like to work for companies. Also bear in mind the experience that people have through the recruitment process. Perhaps when they ring up to find out about that new job, does the person answering the phone be welcoming and helpful, or are they a bit busy and unapproachable and rushed? All of these things are communicating to those potential employees what it's like to work for you. So it's really important that you get them right. We talked in one of the earlier videos about how interviews aren't always the best way, or can be slightly dangerous when we're recruiting. And one of the reasons for that is the unconscious biases that we all have. We talk in people management about the halo and horns effect. This is when we make a snap decision when we meet somebody as to whether we think they're a good or bad person, often with only a few seconds and based on very little information. This is a natural survival technique. You're trying to work out whether somebody's friend or foe straight away. That might be useful if you're facing predators out on the plains, but it's not very helpful when we come to recruiting. So when you are interviewing, or if you use some of the other selection techniques that we talked about, really do try and pay attention to the facts in front of you and not just your gut feeling, which we're all tempted to rely on. It's difficult to completely rule it out, but the more you're aware of it, the more you can train yourself to think about the wider facts in front of you and the information you've gained from all the different sources of selection, and not just how you felt when that person first walked through the door. So that's why when we're talking about screening and selecting employees or potential employees, it's really important that we go about it carefully and think about what we're looking for. When you are interviewing, make sure that they're structured and you've got job-based questions. Remember, that's what you're really trying to find out. How good is this person going to be at their job? It's really tempting to just recruit the people we like, but that's not always the right decision. Don't feel that you have to ask really quirky, novel questions as well. There's sometimes a bit of a trend for those, but they don't always help. I know some people that always want to ask someone how they organise their wardrobe. And whilst that might give you a little insight into their personality, it won't necessarily tell you how well they're going to work in your kitchen, which is what you care about. So make sure you're focusing on the skills and competencies you need. Don't get too caught up asking hypothetical questions either, but ask about real life experiences they've already had. Think about the things that are most important to you and then ask questions about that. So, tell me about a time when you've given excellent customer service. Is a good way to get someone talking about how they've worked before and can show you whether they've got the skills that you need. Think about your values as well. What's important to you as an organisation? And with all of these things, consider what you can and can't teach. And that's really important when you're recruiting. So there's some things that actually you could maybe train someone on, using your particular computer booking system or how a particular coffee machine works. You might be able to train somebody on. But some of the real essentials of customer service can be harder to instill in someone who doesn't already have that instinct. So think about what you're really looking for and what you need in your organisation. Communication is vital at all stages of the recruitment cycle. We want to make sure that if we're finding good potential applicants, we're keeping them and not losing them because we haven't communicated well. Of course, if you get lots of applicants, it's okay not to reply to every single one. You can just have a line in your advert that says if they don't hear from you, that means they've not been selected for interview. However, once we have got down to our short list of people, It's really important that we keep in contact with them. You don't want to have a potentially good applicant and then lose them just because there was a delay and they weren't sure what was happening, and so they've gone and taken a job elsewhere. Make sure that you keep that communication up. Finally, once you have got your new recruit, make the most of them by onboarding them well into the organisation. We talked about this earlier, but it's really important that you don't lose your employees in this early stage. Turnover in the hospitality industry is about 30%, which is roughly double the national average. So if you recruit 10 employees, by the end of the year, 3 of them will have gone and you'll have to recruit again. So it's really important that we put time into this first stage when someone comes on board with us. It's also a perfect opportunity for you to set out your expectations and to build that relationship. You want to put some time into developing them to have the skills that you need and keeping the good employees. So that's our final session on recruitment. I hope you found it interesting and useful.